In this episode, I'm going to talk about the little bit of experimentation I have done with vegan eating. Okay, so this is just sort of my experience. It's anecdotal. I'm far from a nutrition expert. I don't know very much at all. I'm not even a very good cook. I'm kind of learning as I go. So this is just anecdotal. This is just my experience and perception. You are responsible to take that for whatever value or help that it is for you. That's up to you. Now, interestingly, I tell you, the first thing I experienced doing this vegan thing. Now, I'll tell you real quick the reason that I want to try it. The reason for me is just I kind of want to experiment and see what makes me feel how and what I discover is a good thing for me or not in my experience. So I give it a try. I looked up how to do some stuff. I just did a gong show of cooking the vegan first. I was pan frying things and all of this. And over time, I got better at cooking it. I got some stuff upstairs right now. Actually, I'm going to be cooking right after I filmed this episode. But some of it was a disaster. I was putting things in food processors. I cooked things that turned out like mush, almost like Play-Doh. I've learned to kind of simplify it. And now what I do often, very frequently, is I chop up a lot of vegetables and I just pan fry them in the oven. And then I portion that into containers with some quinoa that I make, as well as black beans and pinto beans. And I've been doing that for quite a while, and then sort of experimenting with different combinations of vegetables. I put some salt with that, a little olive oil, and just a tiny bit of some other spices sometimes. And it's working really well. Look at my crazy hair. Okay. One of the first things I experienced that was shocking to me is it offended some people. Seriously. I would put it on social media a lot that I was working on the vegan thing and trying it out. And I would get random messages from people that never talk to me, some messages from people that do talk to me a little bit, and kind of these long paragraphs of people saying, well, it's not good for you. You shouldn't this. And you should. And I'm like, who asked you? Who asked you? You know what I mean? But you should have seen the tone of some of these messages. It almost like personally offended some people. Now, and I want to be clear. I have nothing against people eating meat. I think there's certainly some better practices that can happen. I know the meat industry is an absolute gong show in a lot of cases, and I do not like animals suffering, but without getting too deep into that, the stuff that happens to animals in nature is brutal, which does not justify poor treatment of animals in processing facilities or anything like that. But there are people who hunt animals and kill them pretty quick. And I mean, an argument could sure be made that it's better to go that way than, some other animal getting a hold of that animal and just tearing it to shreds while it's alive and kicking, So it's not very nice any way you look at this discussion. But long story short, me personally, I have nothing against people that hunt and eat meat or buy meat off the grocery store shelves. I mean, we're in a culture that's done it for a long time. But if you disagree with that, that's fine. Be nice, make a case for it. Don't rip people a new butthole over it, though. Everybody doesn't feel the same on this stuff. Just because people eat meat doesn't mean they hate animals or anything like that. The other interesting thing that getting off all of that I experienced with the veganism is when I first did it, and I kind of, as I got okay at cooking it, I would go for chunks of time. Like I would eat pure vegan for like 3 days and then kind of go back to whatever. And then I would eat it for like a week and then go back to whatever. I'm sort of in a stint right now where I'm like 2 weeks straight vegan, and I'm going to do another chunk. I often have my kids over the weekend and I get a little slack, and sometimes we eat whatever. And I consider that almost free day. And so I kind of get off of the whole thing. And every single time I feel like crap. The longer stretches I go eating vegan, or at least vegetarian, that kind of thing, the better I feel. And what I've started to experience is it gets to the point where you still have the psychological craving for things like chips or pizza and stuff like that. I love that stuff. Or do I? Because I'll order it and I'll eat it and I will feel awful. And it's like you didn't realize how bad that stuff was making you feel until you got away from it for a while. Or at least, again, this is just my experience. And I'll go longer stretches without eating that stuff. And then I'll get it. Like it got to the point where at first, like I would go a few days and then I'd order a pizza and I'd eat the pizza, no problem. Then I'd go a week or so, whatever, and I'd keep doing this cycle. And then it would be like, I'm dying for a pizza. I'd order a pizza, I'd eat it, but I'd only get like halfway through and throw the rest out. And I started taking notice of that. I'd get about halfway through. I didn't even want the rest. Next day, I didn't want it. So I'm like, oh, now I'm wasting money on pizza. Now it's gotten to the point where I am starting to even lose the psychological craving for that stuff. I want to eat my vegan. I like how it makes me feel. It just makes my stomach feel better. I feel like it makes my thoughts more clear. I'm not saying I won't go back and forth a little bit. I don't know. But I'm right now in kind of the longest stint doing vegan that I've done. And I'm discovering that I really enjoy how it makes me feel. It sure slims me out. Look at me. I look great. And yeah. So I don't know if it's for you, but it can't hurt to experiment with it a little bit. Like I said, I just dice some vegetables, little oil and salt, and I pan fry them for like 300 or 420 degrees for 40 minutes or something like that, and just portion it into Tupperwares. And then I eat that during the day I try to do it during that intermittent fasting window. And then I substitute a breakfast with like a vegan protein shake that I bought some stuff. It's pretty good. Pretty good. And I do fruit and some things in there too. But again, just my anecdotal experience. Whether this is helpful or not, it's a discussion that I'm interested in. I'm interested in learning more. And I know there's some really delicious vegan cooking options out there, and I'm excited to learn more about them and just kind of grow in this area. So if you have any thoughts or comments on that, I don't care. Throw them in there. I'm eager to learn. Hope this has been at least interesting. Have a nice day, everybody, whatever you decide to eat.